The Minnesota Vikings have some serious work to do in free agency this offseason, with the entire starting secondary becoming free agents or retiring. We're going to be talking about the moves that need to be made and which of the current Vikings are likely to return to this team next season here in this video. Now, before we get into it, though, we know that 91% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. We're on the road to 1K, and your support has been absolutely incredible lately, and we appreciate all of you guys watching these videos. And we know the Vikings have a big offseason. We're going to have all your news here from the Minnesota Vikings right here for you. But without any further ado, Griffen, let's get into our first topic here, or not really first topic, first player, I guess is a better way of putting this one here. Starting it off with Byron Murphy. Of the Vikings' top 6 players in the secondary, 5 are eligible for free agency. Byron Murphy highlights the group after a breakout season. He's the number 6 ranked cornerback in PFF of 2025 free agency rankings and the 33rd top free agent overall. Murphy's 6 interceptions this season were the most among cornerbacks, and his versatility to play in the slot outside is valuable for Flores' defense. Now, a big part of this as well that I think we should touch on is the uncertainty of Brian Flores. Now, we've kind of touched on it a little bit here and there. I don't really think that he's going anywhere at this point. It seems like a lot of these teams have their coaches all filled out and ready to go for the most part, but you never know. So I think we're going to keep that with a grain of salt here, but Byron Murphy is, I think, the top candidate for the Vikings to return to this lineup, absolutely no doubt. We really saw a breakout season last year with, I would say, at least in my opinion, a bit of uncertainty coming into this season. The cornerbacks, where we had Griffen, Stefon Gilmore, some older players who were playing a much bigger role than I personally would have liked, but ultimately they worked out. We gave Byron Murphy that bigger shot here in this lineup and really got to see what he was able to do with this Vikings team. So, of the group here, Griffen, the older players and stuff, thoughts on Byron Murphy being kind of this top candidate, and what do you see coming for him in this upcoming season?
I think it was to be expected that he was going to be the top candidate for this secondary to return, just because, like it said in the graphic there, he led the team in interceptions and he was fantastic this season. He was a dog as far as creating interceptions, creating turnovers, and getting key tackles when we needed them. And especially on a secondary where we have so much uncertainty, if this is one person that you can for sure lock down, that is a major piece to lock down. If anything, yeah, we're going to talk about some of the other guys in a second. But if you sign those guys before Byron Murphy, you're ultimately reducing your chances of getting him back because of the contract availability at that point. But if you go out and get him first, it goes to show where your priorities lie and who you are most committed to bringing back next season.
Yeah, and I really do like bringing him back. The kind of concept of building around Byron Murphy Jr. in this lineup. We saw the veteran aspect of how much that really played an effect into this room and how much the defense thrived with having a lot of young talent and a lot of, I don't want to say wash talent, but a lot of these good veterans that can kind of lead these guys to where they want to be. So Byron Murphy, I think, is really translating into that starter number 1 corner role that a lot of teams wish to have. And I think the Vikings could really lock him up for a long time and really have the secondary locked down for quite some time in the cornerback spot. But we do have a quote kind of as well coming here from an article going on Byron Murphy from Will Ragus here. He says, "I expect to re-sign Murphy to be a major priority for the Vikings, but Adofo-Mensah and company always have certain price point they're not willing to exceed. And after 6 interceptions and a Pro Bowl selection this season, there's a chance Murphy could land a deal on the open market that the Vikings won't match." And I think right now the Vikings are looking at this as, we are ready there. We're ready to go now. We saw the success they had in this regular season, compared to what a lot of people thought they were going to have. And having this defense change drastically would not be a good idea for their hopes of this window that, as we've mentioned, Griffen, in the past few videos, is slowly starting to close. And over this time, you're going to want everything you can get. And still, young quarterback, young offense, young defense, but the peak that we had this season was very, very good. And they don't want to stray away from that too much. So I think that of the secondary right now, Byron Murphy is definitely one of the players that would certainly be overpaid by the Vikings if they absolutely necessarily need to do so. And apart from the other parts of the secondary, that one really is, I think, the biggest outcome for the Vikings that they're hoping to get this season. But as you mentioned as well, a lot more of the secondary that we need to talk about here. Sports Illustrated Will Ragus appraised the Vikings pending free agents as assigned a percentage for each player to return. And Stefon Gilmore, the oldest of the group, received a 20% chance of returning, the lowest chance of any of the Vikings starting cornerbacks. And as I mentioned, Stefon Gilmore, the role that he played this season wasn't anything that we were really too excited for at the beginning. Played well enough, played good, had that veteran leadership in this locker room that they needed. And, ultimately, if he doesn't return, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think it just gives some more room for these younger guys to come in, and especially the way that he played the role this season, the teacher aspect of things, I think certainly worked out for the best part. So, Griffen, what do you think about the kind of older side of the secondary? Do you see as what we're looking at from, these younger guys to the older guys that they want to keep some veteran here, of course, but how much do you think they're going to drastically change this secondary, specifically the corners?
I think the corners we're going to see quite a bit of shakeup, especially when looking at the percentages that Sports Illustrated pointed out of guys to come back. Stefon Gilmore at 20%, and then the other two that we're going to get into in the 30s and the 20% as well. So that's something where we're probably going to see a little bit of shakeup. As far as Stefon Gilmore, I think he served exactly the purpose he needed to, which was to be a bridge type cornerback for this secondary, where we've seen it all the time. We talk about it all the time with quarterbacks. Oh, he's a bridge type quarterback. Oh, it's a bridge type head coach, where they're just there to kind of bridge the gap that is waiting for this young talent to kind of emerge. So this year was really the young corners on this team learning from Stefon Gilmore, learning from some of the other veterans on this defensive front, where, hey, we're going to go into next year learning a lot more. It's almost like being a backup behind a quarterback for a really good quarterback for a year and coming out and balling out the next year. We've seen multiple examples of that in the NFL over just the past decade alone. So with Stefon Gilmore, I think you brought him in to do exactly what he needed to do, just like Sam Darnold. He was brought in for one job. He didn't succeed in that job, but he got himself a prove-it deal for another team as well. So this is something where Stefon Gilmore, if they move on from him, it does make sense, but it does mean that this defensive secondary is going to be a lot more mature and have a lot more wisdom than they did last season.
Yeah, and the way the secondary, specifically the corners, have translated over just a short period of time, it feels like it was only last year that we were really wondering where the corners are going to go. There was almost no hope at it, but we saw the translation from bringing some younger guys, bringing some of the vets, in this case, of course, Stefon Gilmore and Shaq Griffen. They've really translated this to exactly where we want to see. But we do have another quote here going over from Will Ragg. It says, he's assuming the 34-year-old Stefon Gilmore wants to play a 14th NFL season. The safe bet is that he changes teams for a 5th consecutive offseason. Even with the Vikings having holes to fill at their corner, another one-year deal for Gilmore probably doesn't make a ton of sense for their timeline. It kind of goes over just exactly what we spoke about. It's time for the younger guys to come in. Definitely had that bridge-type deal. And, of course, looking at what we have right now and the kind of way we're translating to this game, a lot of injuries have occurred. A lot of people are coming back, so hopefully we do see it. And another kind of little tidbit on this is the Vikings spent several weeks evaluating their cornerback depth before ultimately signing Gilmore, who made over $115 million in his career to a $7 million contract on August 18th. Gilmore offered Minnesota a stable option at cornerback when nothing seemed to go right before the start of the season. He was a vital piece to a top 5 scoring defense, played over 900 snaps, the second most at cornerback, only behind Byron Murphy Jr. So, I'd argue even almost too many snaps for him. Definitely played a much bigger role than we thought, but certainly worked out. But that kind of goes hand in hand with not wanting to see him play too much behind the Vikings again this offseason, if at all. So looking at it as well, we got to realize the injuries were a big part. Gilmore, 34, of course, signed a 1-year deal during the training camp, pretty much just because of Mekhi Blackmon went down with the season-ending Achilles injury. I remember thinking all these and seeing all these happen. I'm like, oh my God, this season is going to be a disaster. But ultimately, it kind of worked out for us now, and hopefully having Mekhi Blackmon back this season too will have another major boost in some of the aspects here. And the way that things have been working out for the Vikings, we know that nothing ever goes their way, but the way that it all translates to the end of the season and to the mid-season point, it always seems to work out some way or another. But, we have a lot of other players that could go. I think Cam Bynum is one that we've been discussing a lot lately as well, but just behind Byron Murphy Jr. is one of the most important pieces of the secondary and probably one that may not be returning. And as we kind of look at this, Cam Bynum played himself into a lucrative market come free agency. The Vikings may not be willing to match him. PFF predicted that he would garner a $14.3 million a year in free agency, a deal that may not be the priority with needs elsewhere, but the cornerback and the offensive and defensive interiors with more glaring issues. Minnesota has Josh Metellus back next season. The Vikings seem confident that Theo Jackson could step into a larger role next season as well. So obviously Cam Bynum is a huge piece of this team. The celebration coordinator, director, whatever you want to call him, but also having kind of that very young veteranship on this team as well. He's been here a few years already and has been under many different players as well with him, and he plays a major piece to this team. So, Griffen, how do you feel about Cam Bynum? I know He's a very big fan favorite here in Minnesota, but that contract is a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a scary contract there, Kirk. And I'm looking at that and I'm getting very worried looking at it just because if they go out and they make the mistake of re-signing Sam Darnold, that's a lot of money that you leave on the table. You go and re-sign Aaron Jones, that's a lot of money right there. So first of all, Sam Darnold, you let him walk for sure. But Aaron Jones, if you can get him on a friendly deal, or like we're going to talk about with someone else in a later video too, there's got to be some freeing up of cap space there where Cam Bynum, absolutely, he's deserving of that contract. No doubt whatsoever. I think what he meant to this team, what he brings as far as talent, he's the same as Byron Murphy, where they represent something to this secondary that a lot of teams just don't have. This was a defense or a secondary that with the chemistry and how they kind of gelled together and what they were able to do on the field. I'm not going to say it was exactly like the Legion of Boom as far as the statistics they put up, but as far as the chemistry that they had, or even the Seahawks defense that they had a few seasons ago as well, where they were really good. They had great celebrations, even their offense too. But having this chemistry where these guys are at the epicenter of it is huge. The secondary, they are the ones that get to have the most fun on defense. So that's where you get the biggest morale boost. We see Josh Metellus on social media with the locker room interviews. He's really big for a morale boost there. So yeah, they have him back, and him and Cam Bynum, they have a phenomenal chemistry. Byron Murphy, he's just been fantastic. So as much as it is an expensive contract to bring back Cam Bynum, he is worth it, but is Minnesota going to be able to do it? I'm not too sure, but it would be interesting to see how Kwesi is able to move things around at no matter cost to get him back next season.
Oh, yeah, I like what you said about the morale as well. This team felt different this year. On the field, off the field, both. We saw the success they had on the field, but a lot of that was coming from the locker room, from these practices, just from spending the week with this team. We saw a different aspect of them on social media, on Twitter. Like you mentioned, we saw these interviews from Josh Metellus. We've always seen Cam Bynum, the practicing of the celebrations before the games. Like, stuff like that subconsciously helps the team win. And we easily saw that this season more than ever in the NFL this season with Cam Bynum, with Byron Murphy. And although, we don't really know, I think that once again, he is another major aspect that almost needs to be brought back. And as the article said there is many other needs that certainly need to be addressed, but when you're looking at this, you also have to think about the mental game as well. That's a big aspect of it. As you said as well, cheaper players are going to come, and hopefully the Vikings kind of do that as well. But looking at this defense, if they want to actually get these wins, they need to keep this defense pretty similar to what it was for the most part and, just figure things out, but at a very important cost. And another very interesting thing as well that we didn't mention just here in this video is the possibility of Harrison Smith retiring. And if he does retire, the case to re-sign Cam Bynum may be a lot stronger. And I really don't want to discuss Harrison Smith retiring, but we have to think about it as well. We saw his reaction to the loss at the end of the season. We saw his reaction to when asked about the question if he was going to retire. He needs to take some time. He needs to see. And, if you almost do re-sign Cam Bynum as well, you got to think that he wouldn't want to leave. It kind of goes hand in hand. But, it's just something I don't really want to talk about right now, but kind of got to just put it out there just to see. So, obviously, Griffen, it's not something that we want. We've been talking about it for a long time, but it certainly is a possibility.
Yeah, I think if Harrison Smith does retire, you go out and you sign Bynum at no matter the cost because of what that's going to be of the blow that's going to be to your defense and your secondary. But Harrison Smith, he's taken multiple pay cuts to stay in Minnesota when he could have went and got a bag anywhere else with any other team and maybe had a chance to win a Super Bowl. But he wants to win one in Minnesota. He loves being here. He loves this team. He loves this culture. He loves the organization, loves the players, loves the staff, everything about it. There's a really great video out there where him and Paul Krause spend an afternoon together talking about the history of the Vikings, how they were different now versus then. And you really see the melding of the two generations where you look at that and it's like, yes, Harrison Smith is this modern day Paul Krause. He's one of the best players that we've ever had in this organization. It would be amazing for him to just finish his career with Minnesota. I just hope that he's able to do it just one more ride. Just give us one more season, just like Ray Lewis did, and hopefully we can ride out going off into the sunset.
Yeah, one more season must indicate to the Vikings that they need to win this for him. For him, for the fans, for everybody. Everybody in Minnesota has been waiting for this moment, and if Harrison Smith does come back after seeing his reaction at the end of the season, you need to do your all to get this team a Super Bowl this year. So, let us know what you think. And obviously, don't mean to get a bit sappy here at the end of the video, but we seriously don't want to see Harrison Smith gone because we need to get that Super Bowl with him on this roster. But like I said, that's all we got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. And remember, all your Vikings news is going to be right here. But we're signing up. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.